That must be the sound of pure happiness and possibly your last save file loading if the disc wasn't scratched. Today, we're diving back to the golden era of gaming with my personal top 10 best PlayStation 1 games of all time. And if you're anything like me, the PS1 wasn't just a console, it was practically my best friend. And the reason I knew I'd be a gamer for the rest of my life. I spent countless hours, late nights, and probably wore out a controller or two, or three. Let's just say they didn't exactly survive my gaming marathon. So, whether you grew up with these classics or just want to know what all the hype's about, stick around and relive some of the greatest games ever to hit the PlayStation 1. Let's get into it. Number 10, Rayman. Have you ever heard of a game more difficult than Dark Souls? This game looked innocent with its bright colors and a hero with no arms or legs. But don't be fooled. This was one of the toughest games I ever tackled on the PS1. I mean, I lost more lives here than I'd like to admit, but did you know that Rayman was originally going to have limbs? But the developers thought the floating hands and feet would look cooler and make his movements easier to animate. Smart move, but it didn't make it any easier for me. But honestly, the level design alone is worth the challenge. It's beautiful, creative, and totally unforgettable. I highly recommend giving Rayman a try. Just be ready to rage a little. Number 9, Crash Bandicoot. This game was the start of so many epic adventures, and let me tell you, I was hooked from day one. Now I know a lot of gamers out there prefer the third game, and I find both great as well. But the first one's got my heart a bit more. But did you know that Crash Bandicoot was originally called Willy the Wombat before the developers wisely decided that didn't quite scream cool? I started playing this game right before my summer vacation, which turned out to be a massive mistake because I couldn't think of anything else. I spent the whole holiday dreaming about smashing crates and collecting Wumpa fruits. Crash Bandicoot is classic chaotic fun and totally deserving of a spot on my list.
What have I got?
Number 8, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. This game had us all feeling like skateboarding legends, kick-flipping and grinding to that iconic soundtrack. Fun fact, did you know Tony Hawk nearly turned down the project because he thought video games weren't his thing? Lucky for us, he didn't. Now, before I got the full game, I was living off the demo, 2 minutes of pure bliss over and over, as I tried to master every trick before that timer ran out. Worth it? Absolutely. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is a classic that left us all totally amped and made me go from listening to Snoop Dogg to punk rock. Number 7, Final Fantasy VIII. This game had everything. An epic love story, beautiful graphics, and a soundtrack to die for. But fun fact, did you know the development team almost set the entire game in space? Yup, Squall and Renoa were nearly intergalactic. And if you were like me, you got stuck in lunatic Pandora way underleveled, battling your way through while hoping for a miracle that never came. Which actually forced me to start the game all over again. And for those that don't know, lunatic Pandora is at disc 3 of 4 in the game. Still, FF8 has a unique charm that makes it unforgettable. And the only thing that stands in the way of climbing higher on my list is the strange junction system, and the fact that the enemies leveled up in parallel with me. Number 6, Resident Evil 2. This game took survival horror to a whole new level. Claustrophobic hallways, terrifying zombies, and that creepy police station that just felt too quiet. Did you know that Resident Evil 2 was almost completely scrapped and redone from scratch because the developers thought the first version was too boring? But trust me, this final version was anything but. Now, I'll never forget my first playthrough. My older brother said he'd watch for moral support, but 15 minutes in, he was snoozing on the couch while I was sweating like a pig. And let me tell you, once that alone with the zombies feeling hit, I shut it off and was done for the night. Didn't pick it back up until I had some daylight and backup. This game is a classic that's scary, intense, and absolutely unforgettable. Number 5, Tekken 3. For a fighting game nerd like me, this was pure gold. Fast-paced, smooth, and loaded with epic combos. And listen, I was unbeatable in this game. My brothers even started calling me Bruce Lee's long-lost cousin because I'd wipe the floor with them every time. I had the combos memorized, the counters mastered. By the end, I think they all just gave up, while for me it was the other way around because by the time Tekken 5 dropped, I was even competing at a pro level. Fun fact, Tekken 3 was one of the first games to use motion capture, so those moves looked extra real. Personally, this is still one of the best fighting games ever made. Who is your go-to character? Number 4, Tomb Raider. This game was the total package. Mystery, action, and Lara Croft dodging traps like a pro. Did you know Lara was almost named Laura Cruz? The developers changed it to give her a more British vibe. I'm seriously proud of finishing this game because, let's be real, Tomb Raider was brutal. Traps everywhere, tricky puzzles, and no hints or guides to bail you out. Remember, this was back when you couldn't just Google your way out of a challenge. Now, I'll admit, it's probably the game on my list that's aged the worst. But with the remastered version released in 2024, I highly recommend everyone give it a go. Tomb Raider is a classic that defined adventure gaming and made Lara Croft an icon. Number 3, Mortal Kombat Trilogy. Now, I know this game's a love it or hate it deal. Critics were mixed, but I absolutely freaking love it. This version was like Mortal Kombat on steroids with a massive lineup of playable characters, insane gameplay, and over-the-top action. And did you know that Mortal Kombat Trilogy has a hidden character named Chameleon who randomly shifts between all the male ninjas during a fight? They really went all in, throwing every character they could into the mix. For me, it was a dream come true. Endless matchups, brutal combos, and just pure MK chaos. Mortal Kombat Trilogy might be divisive, but for me, it's a total knockout and still stands as one of the best fighting games ever made. Number 2, Metal Gear Solid. I'm sad this isn't my number 1 because I am a huge MGS nerd, and Hideo Kojima is an absolute idol of mine. The amount of love I have for this game and the entire series is inexplicable. I could speak for hours about it. This game was just groundbreaking. Stealth, storytelling, action, all wrapped up in one. In other words, more than just this sound. MGS was way ahead of its time, with things like breaking the fourth wall and AI that actually tried to outsmart you. This was for me the start of one of the best video game series ever made. And here's a fun fact. Did you know that Kojima originally planned for MGS to be a simple action game, but then pivoted to stealth because of hardware limitations? Genius move. I'll confess I only had the demo back in the day, so I didn't get to play the full game until years later. This game was the one that proved gaming could be art. Metal Gear Solid may be number 2, but in my heart, it's right up there with the best.
I can read your every thought.
Number 1, Final Fantasy VII. This is my ultimate gaming love story. This game isn't just a favorite, it's a lifelong romance. I fell hard for it back in the day, and somehow it's only grown more incredible with time. Funny story, when I first played it, my English was, let's just say, under construction. I got stuck early on simply because I couldn't understand half of what was being said, but I was so stubborn that I kept pushing through. And crazy enough, Final Fantasy VII actually ended up teaching me a ton of English along the way. Fun fact, did you know the game was originally going to be set in New York? Thankfully, they gave us Midgar instead. Pure magic. This game has aged like the finest wine, and when I played it start to finish again just 4 years ago, it was somehow even better than I remembered. The story, the characters, the music, it's perfection. This is more than a game for me. It's a masterpiece, a memory. Final Fantasy VII isn't just my number 1, it's my forever. And that's a wrap on my top 10 PS1 games. Now I know what you're thinking, but what about this game? Trust me, narrowing it down was tough. The PS1 is packed with classics, and I'd need a top 50 to do it justice. But hey, these are my absolute favorites. Hope you enjoyed the trip down memory lane. If you did, please follow, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your favorite PS1 game.